Hi everybody, it's Eric with the Adventuresmiths. Today I'm going to talk about the top 10 things you want to look at when you are searching for your own homestead. So let's get started. Let's check it out. All right, so one of the first things that you want to look at whenever you're trying to find your perfect homestead is something that fits in your budget. Now, a lot of people, they look at their debt to income ratio and they look at different things that would negate their budget and don't realize how many things you have to purchase and how many things actually go into the start of your farm. So, of course, you could go way up on the high end of your budget and end up, finding something that may seem good on paper, but then you get to the property and you can't afford to cut the grass. So you want to make sure that you're definitely able to buy the essentials that you need just to get started on the property. And of course, getting out there and homesteading, a lot of people want to start with animals. They want to start tilling their land, getting the property ready. And if you take all of your money and invest it in the property itself, then kind of prohibits that quite a bit. So what I would suggest is just looking for the most property that you can get. You're not going to find something that's perfect because there's no such thing as perfect property unless you're rolling deep with that Powerball money. But I am not right now, and I assume most of you are not as well. So what I would do is try and get the biggest bang for your buck, get that acreage, that ability to expand, and then move on from there and start building your paradise. Here's number 2. Whenever we were trying to figure out where in the world in the United States we were going to build this homestead, one of the things that we looked at where there was an abundance of natural resources. And I don't know if any of you know this or not, but Arkansas is actually considered the natural state. And they claim to be one of the only states that if everything else in the world went to crap, that Arkansas will be able to survive on its own just because of all the natural resources that it has. I believe that to be true. There is an abundance of natural resources in Arkansas. Where we have decided to purchase our homestead is in the Ozarks. So still kind of part of that Arkansas plateau. But we are a little bit north of Arkansas, outside of Branson, Missouri. And again, one of the biggest things that you need on a property is water. I mean, water is the sustenance for life. You need it to feed your animals. You need it to irrigate your property. Not only that, but it'd be great to have some place to kind of build a pond, have a place that you have for recreation. So water source, huge factor in what we were looking for in our property. And we're very blessed to have 2 spring-fed ponds on the property that we purchased. So very happy about that. Number 3. You also want to have a good mix of pasture and woods. And the reason why is because while you can, if you like, when you're not looking at the prices of property, you might find something that's like 80 acres for like really cheap. And you're like, wow, it's 80 acres. I think that I could really expand that. And then you go out and you look at the property and it's like the side of a mountain, or it's, so oftentimes I saw giant properties that were for sale and I was like, oh my gosh, look how much acreage this is. And then I get out to it and you can't do anything with it. Now, if you are, let's say you're in your 20s and, you want to get out and you want to have a fresh start and you feel like you can get out there and bust your butt and tear trees out of the ground, then by all means buy 80 acres on the side of a mountain and dig it out and make your own pasture. But for us, we were looking for something that was a little bit more ready to go. So kind of like a half blend of pasture and woods. Kind of give you the opportunity to start your gardening, start raising your cows and chickens out on pasture, which is important to us. And so for us, huge part of that is getting a part of pasture and woods blended together. Number 4. So number 4, pre-existing buildings. We before we put an offer on this one that we're looking at that we finally decided on, we actually had placed an offer on another one as well. And the main reason we really loved the first property was that it had great pre-existing buildings. There was an awesome hay barn on it. There was great stall barn, which you could keep cows and goats and just basically like move onto the farm and start farming kind of deal. And I mean, that's awesome to have. It was half the size of the property that we currently purchased, so it was only 10 acres compared to the 20 that we got. So ultimately, why we did not go with the property that we first selected is we actually went out to the property on and off period without our realtor, and we just walked the property. And while I was walking the property, it was almost like in the middle of half of the property, it was like a stream flowing through it. And I thought it might just be because of the rain, or I don't know, it seemed strange to me. So I followed the source of the water up to the far end of the property. And when I got there, there was a spring, which I was like really excited about because that's one of my prerequisites, is having a spring on the property. Problem is that the spring was right, like literally like 5 feet past our property. So it was on our neighbor's property about 5 feet to the north, and it was just gushing out onto our property, flooding half of it. So, I mean, you can look at that and you can say, okay, well, we can, divert it down and run it this way. But the ultimate thing is that it wasn't on our property, so we could not manage it. We could not maintain it. It wasn't ours. So when it comes down to it, it just was a nuisance. It was something that we would have to make all kinds of modifications for. And then in my eyes, we'll get a backhoe out there digging up the ground, making French drains, and then the neighbor will come out and they'll see us doing this, realize that they have this awesome resource on their property, and then all that work that we did will be in vain. And just to me, it made sense to rescind our offer at that point due to the fact that that spring basically made half of the property unusable. By the time I got off the walk, my feet were soaking wet. All my kids were soaking wet, covered with mud. And so putting animals out in that type of situation would be horrendous. Even just having to work on a daily basis out there in that type of situation would be horrendous. So whenever you're looking for your land and pasture, make sure that the pasture is usable. It might look pretty from the outside, but until you trudge around on it and actually take your boots on the ground, who knows what you're actually getting into. Another thing is that the fact that water was on the property and laying down, covering half the land, wasn't disclosed in the disclosure agreement. So be very careful with that too. I mean, a lot of times, especially if you're buying the property from somebody that maybe be elderly or somebody that may have just had, like, maybe rented the property for the past 5-10 years, something like that type of situation, they might not exactly know what's going on with the specific property that you're getting. So the only way to truly find out that disclosure is to investigate yourself, to get inspections done, to get appraisals done. All that stuff's very important to make sure that you know what you're getting into before you get into it. And the existing buildings that we have on the property that we purchased were built in 1950. So as you can imagine, they're a little old, a little ran down. But I kind of like that challenge. I think that some people might shy away from that, but the fact that they were built in 1950 and are still standing, in my eyes, like, that's awesome. And I think that just means they have great bones, and we'll be able to dissect them a little bit and build them to our own personal needs and what we're going to have to, make for our specific animals and what we specifically want to grow. So while did not have kind of like the perfect situation for outbuildings, it had bones. We got a chicken coop. We've got a place for storage outside for storing, tools and things like that. And then we've got a little barn that I'm going to convert to a hay barn / animal stall barn. So at least we've got some buildings to start with, for sure. The fifth thing that really played into the property that we were looking at is proximity to work. Now, obviously, going out into the middle of nowhere and finding your little property is kind of an ideal situation. You have lots of privacy, lots of area to just relax. I really plan on retiring from the place that I'm currently employed at, so finding a place where we can grow our family and where I can continue to grow in my position was important to me. So I mean, you just kind of have to justify what it's worth, you know? And obviously, the more remote you get, the cheaper the properties are going to become. And I think that you just kind of have to, I mean, there's sacrifices that need to be made in order to get exactly what you want in a property. And so with my commute, we're looking at probably about like a 40 to 45 minute commute. And it's the thing that didn't really scare me too much about that is that, you know, we've lived in big cities and we lived where you have to do a commute in bumper to bumper traffic where you just want to rip your steering wheel off kind of thing. And my commute to where we're living now is just kind of nice, relaxing, you know, going through the back roads and checking out the scenery. So it's not going to be horrible. I think that type of commute is a lot more decompressing, whereas going through a commute where you have to drive through a city type of situation is more compressing. You build anxiety and you build angst going through that crazy traffic and dealing with crazy people on the road. So one thing to think about. So number 6, we had to the house that we actually had to pick, it had to be move-in ready. A lot of people kind of have the luxury of, whenever they buy their homestead, of, oh, let's just live at our parents' house while we rebuild, or, you know, let's get a fifth wheel or something like that and put it on the property while we build up our house. We unfortunately did not have that luxury. Being in the middle of the United States here in the Ozarks, we don't really have any friends or family out here. So it's just our own family out here and kind of on an island. So we depend on ourselves for a lot of things. And which is not, I mean, it stinks to not be close to our family, but it's nice to kind of have the independence and to, you know, I don't know. It just is what it is. We're on an island out in the middle of nowhere. So that was a huge part of our search, was finding a house that was move-in ready. Number 7, building restrictions. So what are building restrictions? What does that mean? How does that play into what works, what doesn't work, what can you do? So living in different counties, different cities, different states, there are what's called building restrictions. And what that means is that, so say for instance, you need to, you're looking to add a room onto your house, or you're looking to build a garage, or you're looking to build a barn, whatever the case may be. Most of the time, when you're living within certain city limits, they're going to require you to permit that build. So you have to go in, you have to show them plans of what you're going to build, you have to purchase your permits, you have to have your permits available, and then after it's finished, depending on what the project is, an inspector has to come out and see what the work you've done and make sure that it follows code and make sure that everything is legit. So that can be a blessing and a curse in the respect that, you know, not having building restrictions, you could literally build your entire house out of tires. You could, you know, make a mud barn. I mean, plastic bottle goat house. You can do whatever the heck you want. Like, there's not going to be anybody breathing down your neck saying you can or cannot do this. Now, where that becomes a curse is that sometimes people take liberties and they cut corners and they'll do, you know, haphazard electrical jobs, and, you know, that you can really put your family and yourselves in danger due to the fact there's nobody that's checking your work and due to the fact that there's no restrictions on what you're doing. So what I would recommend is, and one of the things that we really wanted was to have no building restrictions. And sometimes the county, like, will require something as stupid as, this is not even an exaggeration, you literally just put down on a napkin. You could literally submit a napkin with your building drawings on it and say, this is what I want to build. And they will allow you to build based on your napkin drawing. So I would recommend still, even though there's no restrictions, utilize the codes that are there. There's a reason why they're there. You know, using like 2x6s to build your frame, and it's going to only benefit you and your family in the long run. So learn what you can about the code. Even if you're living in a place with no building restrictions, try and build it as close to code as you can, just to ensure that you're providing a safe home for your family and for generations to come. Also, in the long run too, will make your house have better sellability. So keep that in mind. Number 8. All right, number 8. Number 8 is the ability to self-sustain. Now that comes in a bunch of different ways, and one of the first things that we really were looking for was a property that had a well and septic on it. Those are kind of like the basic fundamentals. Again, going back to number 2, I mean, having that water source in the property is obviously very important, but a potable well where you can actually drink and take showers and have a drinking source is obviously huge. You don't want to be able to drink water on your property. If not, you can't really live on the property. So in addition to that, the septic system on this property that we purchased is kind of brand new, so it should help us out in the respect that it won't need much repairs and should last us a good 5 to 10 years if we properly maintain it and take care of it as we should. Moving forward with self-sustaining, getting to the point where we are independent from the electric company is our next goal. So once we have the homestead established a little bit, that is going to be our next goal to focus on. And what I'm hoping for is to kind of use a mixed bag of that. And a lot of people kind of just go straight to solar, and I honestly don't feel that the solar technology that we have available right now is good enough to sustain for the price that it costs. It pretty much costs the same exact thing as what you would pay your electric company for your bills, and then by the time you pay off the solar panels, they're in need of repair and replacement. So it's like then you're just buying more solar panels. So I think that technology is like right on the cusp of getting awesome. I think there's a lot of people putting research and money into that type of energy source. So it's on the cusp of really being a great source of power, but I just don't think we're quite there yet. So if you maybe had some solar panels, you've got some wind power, you got some windmills up, that along with maybe a hydroelectric generator, if I can really source these springs out that we have on our property and get some hydroelectric power from that. I think the combination of all three will kind of keep you in a constant supply of power, and that's what my goal is. So that's what I'm looking to build towards and work out for our family. Number 9, biggest bang for your buck. So you can build outbuildings, and this is one thing that we struggled with and kind of, getting in our minds when we were looking at properties right from the beginning was that, sometimes you come up to these properties and they're priced a little bit on your high end, but they've got really nice barns, and you're like, oh, that's a great barn. Not really so much property available on it though. And you got to think of it this way. So you can build outbuildings until the day you die. Like, there's always the ability to build more buildings. There's always the ability to improve the buildings that you already have. You cannot build acreage though. The acreage that you have is what it is. You cannot, I guess if there was like a adjoining property in certain circumstances, you could buy extra property that might be adjoining here and there. But the bottom line is that you have what you have. So you want to make sure that what you have is what you need. And having the ability to expand and grow on the property is huge for us. Our grand master plan is to really develop our house, and we want to take in foster groups of children and multiple groups and exponentially build our family up like crazy and, teach them that God in heaven is their father and show them what a good loving family is. And so if we don't have space to build, then it's hard to manage that. In addition to that too, one of our goals is that once these kids graduate from high school, we don't want to have to actually just kick them out. Our goal is to actually eventually build tiny houses on our property where if they decide they want to stay with us until whenever, they can have their own little property on our property. And if it's a tiny house and it's built on, on a structure that's movable, then they could move it to wherever they want in the entire United States or in the entire world for all I care. But that's our goal for our foster kids, is to build little tiny houses for them after they graduate from high school. So obviously, if we were on a 2 or 5 acre property, it would be hard for us to accomplish that. Number 10 is good energy, good vibes, good feel. When you get to the property, it just feels like it hugs you. You got like a warm embrace kind of thing from it. Believe it or not, you can find that in lots of properties. You can also sometimes, like, you come into a property and the energy just kind of feels creepy. Like somebody got murdered there or something like that. I mean, who knows what happened in the past there, but it's hard to explain until you actually go onto the property and you're walking around and you just get those creeper vibes from it. But what I would recommend is whenever you get your realtor, I mean, obviously your realtor is going to take you through the house. They're going to show you what they can. But I mean, especially if it's a vacant property, go out there on your own, seek it out on your own, walk the property, kind of see how the water flows, see how the rain sets on the property, look for puddles, look for anything that might be an issue that you'll have to deal with in the future. So it'll just give you a better idea of what you're getting into. And I mean, the research factor in that, it doesn't take much. You're going to drive out, spend an hour or two on the property, just walking around. If you think about the benefit of that in the long run, it's huge. It's going to save you from buying a property that might be terrible, that, you know, might have sinking ground on it, or might have a casket of dead bodies in the corner of it. I don't know. Something that gives that creeper vibe to it. So just go out and check it out first and make sure that you just feel at home on the property and you feel comfortable. I think that if you're going to be living your life there, raising your family, raising your animals, and, you know, calling it your home, just make sure that it has that home feel to it. Hey guys, I just wanted to thank you for watching the video today. We've got lots more planned. We are just 2 weeks away from closing on the property and moving on to our dream property. We are brimming with excitement right now. Cannot wait to get this all closed, taken care of, said and done. Just remember that Jesus Christ is your Savior and He will take care of all things. Just keep your faith in Him and He will guide your path. And give all thanks, give all glory to Him. Be willing to take those steps, take those leaps, take that adventure, and life will be an adventure. God bless. Take care.